Lucas had always been considered the most level-headed one in the family. Since he was young, he learned to be the balance between his sister Mariana's impulsiveness and their parents' expectations. At 22, he was already working part-time and going to school, but he still lived at home, sharing in what seemed like a quiet routine. The trust between them was something they all valued, even though there were unspoken tensions hanging in the air. Mariana, 2 years older, was the complete opposite: spontaneous, charismatic, and impulsive. Her relationship with Raphael, who was a close friend of Lucas's, seemed solid to everyone. They were the admired couple in their small town, and their relationship felt like a natural extension of Lucas's friendship with Raphael. The bond between the three of them was so strong that no one could imagine anything shaking its foundation. Raphael, a hard-working and loyal guy, saw Lucas almost like a brother. He spent afternoons at their house, sharing secrets and dreams for the future. Their friendship was built on mutual trust, easy laughter, and a loyalty that had grown over the years. For Lucas, this connection was a safe haven amidst life's difficulties. However, beneath the surface of this seemingly peaceful life, there were signs that few people noticed. Mariana would sometimes seem distant, distracted by her phone during conversations, or she would avoid making direct eye contact when she was with Raphael. Lucas noticed, but he didn't want to believe anything was wrong. He preferred to think it was just tiredness or a passing distraction. Their family prized their image of unity. Their parents, proud of their children, never hesitated to show the neighbors how close they all were. Family dinners, laughter around the table, and talks about the future were routine. But like any family, there were secrets hidden in the shadows, ready to come out when least expected. Lucas always carried the weight of being the voice of reason. He believed protecting his family was his duty, but he also held values like justice and truth in high regard. This inner conflict had caused minor tensions before, but it was nothing compared to what was about to happen. Sometimes, during quiet nights, he would wonder how far his loyalty would really go. Would he protect Mariana no matter what? Or would he choose the truth, even if it hurt his family ties? These were questions without answers at the time, but they would soon become crucial. Mariana, carefree, seemed to live life on her own terms. Her charm opened doors for her, but it also led her to make thoughtless decisions. To Lucas, she was both a source of pride and a source of worry. What he didn't realize was that her impulsiveness was about to put them all in a very difficult position.
Back then, Raphael was planning to ask Mariana to marry him. He had confided in Lucas about his plans, even showing him the ring he had bought. Lucas, feeling emotional, promised to keep the secret until the right moment. It was a testament to their trust, making their friendship even stronger. Fate, however, had already set a trap. Amidst the smiles and plans, a silent secret was growing, ready to shatter the family's fragile harmony. And what would you do if you discovered a secret that could destroy your family? Before we continue with this story full of dilemmas and emotion, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the upcoming stories that will touch your heart. On what seemed like an ordinary afternoon, Mariana asked to borrow Lucas's phone to quickly take care of something. Later, without realizing it, she left her own phone in the living room. Lucas, while picking up a few things, went to put his sister's phone away. It was then that the lit-up screen caught his attention. A notification revealed an intimate message sent by someone who was definitely not Raphael. Lucas's heart started racing, and his hand trembled for a second. He didn't want to be invasive, but curiosity, or maybe the need to understand, got the better of him. A swipe on the screen opened the entire conversation before his eyes. The words were clear, leaving no room for innocent interpretations. There were plans to meet, confessions of passion, and even compromising photos. Lucas felt his stomach turn, as if he were facing a personal betrayal. The world he knew was starting to fall apart right there in the palm of his hand. He closed his eyes for a moment, wishing it was all just a misunderstanding. But every line confirmed the worst. Mariana was cheating on Raphael. The weight of the discovery crashed down on him brutally. His sister, the one he had sworn to protect, had crossed a line there was no coming back from. He sat down on the couch, motionless, the phone still glowing in his hand. His mind was racing in circles, trying to sort through thoughts that were tumbling over each other. Part of him wanted to pretend he had never seen anything. Another part was screaming, demanding that he do something. After all, Raphael was more than a friend. He was practically a brother. The feeling of disloyalty wasn't just coming from Mariana. He felt as if he had betrayed Raphael simply by finding out and not telling him immediately. The secret weighed heavily on his heart, making every breath feel like an effort. He knew that night would be long and filled with impossible choices. The silence in the house contrasted sharply with the whirlwind in his mind. Every tiny sound, the wind against the windows, the clock on the wall, seemed to amplify his anguish. The once familiar environment now felt suffocating, charged with a secret that burned in his hands.
Returning the phone without saying a word would have been the easiest path, but Lucas knew he wouldn't be able to look Raphael in the eye without feeling guilt eating him up inside. Their friendship had always been based on trust, and hiding this felt like an unforgivable act. As he held the device, involuntary tears welled up in his eyes. They weren't just for the pain of the discovery, but for the weight of the decision he now faced. He knew that any choice he made would destroy something, his family or his friendship. And either way, he wouldn't come out of it unscathed. In that moment, Lucas understood that his life would change forever. What was at stake wasn't just the truth, but the very definition of who he was and the values that would guide his future. Lucas spent a sleepless night, staring at his bedroom ceiling as if the answers he sought were written on it. Every time he closed his eyes, the messages on the phone returned to his mind like an open wound that wouldn't heal. He tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe Mariana was just going through a confused phase. But deep down, he knew there were no possible excuses. The next morning, the routine seemed the same for everyone except him. Mariana smiled as if nothing had happened, and Raphael came over for lunch as cheerful as ever. He watched the two of them interact, feeling a sting of pain with every shared laugh. The contrast between the hidden truth and their apparent happiness was unbearable. Throughout the day, Lucas tried to avoid Raphael. He spoke little, avoided eye contact, and kept himself busy with any task that could give him an excuse. But every evasion only reinforced his anguish. He felt like a coward for not having the courage to reveal what he knew. In his mind, two voices battled for space. One screamed that his loyalty should be to his family, that exposing Mariana would be an irreversible betrayal. The other reminded him of his friendship with Raphael, of the ring hidden in a pocket, of the trust Raphael placed in him, completely unaware of what was happening. The weight of the truth kept growing heavier with each passing hour. Lucas realized he wouldn't be able to keep this secret for long. His silence was turning into a form of complicity, and it was corroding him. It was as if every minute he stayed silent was an act of betrayal against Raphael. In moments of weakness, he considered confronting Mariana first, demanding that she be the one to tell Raphael. But the fear of her reaction and the pressure from his parents made him hesitate. He knew his sister was impulsive and could turn the entire family against him if he confronted her directly. Still, Lucas couldn't deceive his own conscience. He had always believed that the truth, no matter how painful, should prevail. And at that moment, being true to himself seemed more important than any blood tie. The doubt, however, didn't disappear. Did Raphael even really want to know? Or would he prefer to live in an illusionary love? Lucas didn't have that answer, but he felt that silence would be in even greater violence.
When he looked at himself in the mirror, he saw the face of someone in deep conflict staring back. It wasn't just about whether to tell or not. It was about who he would be from that point forward. And that choice was now approaching, inevitable. With a heavy heart, he decided he could no longer put it off. The truth needed to be told, and he would be the one to bear the weight of revealing it. The opportunity came on an ordinary afternoon when Lucas and Raphael were alone on the porch. The comfortable silence between them contrasted sharply with the storm raging inside Lucas. He knew that moment would change everything, but there was no turning back now. Raphael was talking about his future plans with Mariana, mentioning trips, children, and even details about the wedding he intended to propose soon. Every word felt like a knife twisting in Lucas's heart. He took a deep breath, trying to gather his courage. "Rafa, there's something I need to tell you," he began, his voice trembling. Raphael furrowed his brow, confused, but gave him his immediate attention. The full weight of their friendship was in that single sentence. Lucas told him what he had seen. He didn't hide any details, but he didn't add his own judgments either. He just laid out the facts, like an open wound. The words came out slowly, heavy, as if each one drained his energy. Raphael was silent for a long moment, his gaze lost on the horizon. Lucas felt his heart beating irregularly, fearing his friend's reaction. Raphael's expression shifted between disbelief and pain, as if he had taken an unexpected blow. "Are you sure about what you're saying?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Lucas just nodded, unable to look at him directly. The air felt thin, and every second dragged on like an eternity. The truth hit Raphael full force. His eyes welled up, and he brought a hand to his face as if trying to stop his world from completely collapsing. Lucas wanted to hug him, but he knew that his very presence was part of the pain. The silence between them was almost unbearable. Finally, Raphael stood up and went into the house without another word. Lucas remained seated, feeling emptied out, as if he had handed over not just a secret, but a part of himself. He knew there was no going back. What was said, and the consequences were now inevitable. Raphael's silence was just the prelude to the storm that was coming. In that moment, Lucas realized that telling the truth wasn't the end of a burden, but the beginning of an even heavier one. It didn't take long for Raphael to seek out Mariana. That same night, he showed up at her house with a look full of pain and fury. Lucas, in his room, could feel the tension rising throughout the house, like thunder about to crack. The sound of the door slamming shut and the firm footsteps announced that something inevitable was about to happen.
In the living room, Raphael faced Mariana, his eyes glistening with tears. "I need you to tell me the truth," he said, his voice choked. Mariana tried to offer a nervous smile, as if she could charm her way out of the situation, but she realized there was no escape. Raphael's expression was that of someone who already knew the answer. She denied it at first, stammering out confused excuses, but Raphael wasn't fooled. "I saw the messages," he stated, without mentioning Lucas. Mariana's lie began to crumble under the pressure, and involuntary tears filled her eyes. "I messed up," she finally murmured, admitting what Lucas already knew. The confession brought no relief, only more tension. Raphael stood up, pacing back and forth as if he needed to move to keep from exploding inside. "Why?" he asked, his voice almost a shout, but sounding more desperate than furious. Mariana tried to justify herself, saying she felt ignored, that Raphael worked too much, and that she had just gotten carried away. Her words sounded feeble in the face of the gravity of the betrayal. Lucas, listening from his room, felt a tightness in his chest. He didn't want to witness it, but he couldn't pull himself away. Every word exchanged between them hit his conscience like a hammer,
reminding him that he was the one who had set this scene in motion. Through his tears, Raphael said he didn't know if he could ever look at Mariana the same way again. Desperate, she tried to hug him, but he pushed her away. The chasm between them seemed impossible to bridge, and no apology would be enough to fill that void. The entire house seemed to breathe tension. Their parents, who still didn't know what was happening, heard the argument, but didn't intervene. Lucas remained silent, feeling his role in this drama was far from over. The confrontation ended with Raphael storming out of the house, slamming the door hard behind him. Mariana collapsed on the sofa, crying uncontrollably. And Lucas, alone in his room, knew he would soon be placed directly in the eye of the hurricane. The next day, Mariana found out that Lucas was the one who had revealed the secret to Raphael. The news hit her like a sharp arrow, and her anger erupted in a scream that echoed through the house. "You told him, didn't you?" she accused, storming into her brother's room with fire in her eyes. Lucas tried to stay calm. "I couldn't hide this from Rafa. He's my friend. He deserved to know the truth." His words were firm, but Mariana's heart nothing but betrayal. "You've destroyed my life," she screamed, tears streaming down her face. "You chose him over me, your own flesh and blood." The words echoed like stabs to Lucas's heart. He felt the weight of the accusation, but he did not back down.
"I'm not the one who destroyed anything. You made your choices," he replied, trying to stay firm. But inside, doubt was still eating away at him. Could he have handled it differently? Mariana, furious, threw her phone against the wall, shattering it to pieces. The symbolic gesture made it clear there was no going back. She looked at him as if Lucas were an enemy, no longer a brother. The trust between them had turned to ashes. The argument spread through the house. Their parents arrived, trying to understand what was happening, but Mariana pulled them into her version of the story, accusing Lucas of meddling in her life and destroying her relationship. Their mother especially took their daughter's side, scolding Lucas for not protecting the family. Lucas felt the weight of being alone. No matter how much he explained, it seemed no one was willing to listen. To them, the bigger mistake wasn't Mariana's betrayal, but his choice to break the silence. His sister's resentment turned into a wall. She made it clear she would not forgive him, no matter what he said. For Mariana, family loyalty should come before any friendship or sense of morality. Hurt, Lucas realized he had lost his sister. The bond that had united them since childhood was shattered, and the scars from this break would be hard to heal. Still, he knew he couldn't take it back. Deep down, he understood he had made his decision and now had to face all the consequences, no matter how painful. The argument between Mariana and Lucas soon spread through the house like wildfire. Their parents, shocked by the severity of the situation, demanded an explanation. Mariana, still in tears, accused her brother of ruining her life. Lucas, standing his ground, tried to explain that he had only told Raphael the truth, but his argument seemed to get lost in the air. Their father, visibly upset, looked at Lucas with disappointment. "Family comes first, Lucas. Always. You should have protected your sister, not exposed her." The words landed heavily, as if invalidating any justification. Their mother, meanwhile, hugged Mariana, treating her as the victim of the situation. Lucas felt a tightness in his chest. He, who had always tried to be the family's support, was now seen as the traitor within his own home. The injustice of the moment aided him, but at the same time, it reinforced his conviction that he couldn't live under the shadow of a lie. Meals became silent and tense. Every look was filled with judgment, and Lucas started avoiding being at home. The division was clear. Mariana had their parents' support, while he carried the weight of the truth alone. Mariana didn't miss a chance to reinforce her anger. She would shoot him icy glares and sharp words whenever they were in the same space. Lucas, tired, stopped responding. The rift between them grew wider with each passing day.
Raphael, for his part, disappeared from the family's daily life. His absence was a constant reminder that nothing would ever be the same. Lucas wondered if he had done the right thing by telling the truth, or if he had just destroyed relationships that could have been saved. The nights were long and silent. Lucas could hear his sister's muffled sobs from the next room, but he no longer had the strength to reach out. The barrier between them was insurmountable. Amidst it all, he began to realize something even more cruel. He hadn't just lost his sister's trust, but also the place he occupied within the family. It was as if he had been emotionally exiled from his own home. And, despite the pain, Lucas knew there was no going back. The choice had been made, and now all that was left was to deal with the consequences of the fracture he had revealed. In a small town, secrets rarely stay hidden. It only took a few days for rumors about Mariana's betrayal to spread through the streets. At the market, in the town square, and even at church, whispers followed the family like persistent shadows. Lucas felt the heavy stares when he walked through town. Some looked at him with respect, thinking he had done the right thing. Others judged him as the brother who failed to protect his own family. The line between hero and villain had never been so thin. Mariana, on the other hand, became the target of cruel comments. People who once admired her now whispered behind her back. Her pride made her walk with her head held high, but at home she would break down, blaming Lucas for every word that echoed through the streets. Their parents also felt the weight of the rumors. Close friends quietly drifted away, and social invitations became rare. The family name, once a symbol of respect, was now tarnished by the scandal. And for all of them, the one to blame wasn't Mariana, but Lucas. For Lucas, every street corner was a reminder of the loneliness he had sunk into. Raphael, who used to walk by his side, now avoided contact. The absence of his friend hurt more than the curious stares from the townspeople. He wondered if he saw him as an ally or as the one responsible for destroying his world. Despite everything, Lucas kept his head held high. He knew he couldn't control what people said about him, only his own actions. Still, the pressure was suffocating. With every whisper he heard, he felt more isolated. At night, the comments echoed in his mind like ghosts. He wondered if he would have the courage to face the entire town in the name of truth. After all, telling Raphael had been difficult enough, but enduring the collective judgment seemed like an even crueler test. Raphael's silence remained the most painful wound. He wished for just a word, some confirmation that his decision hadn't been in vain. But his friend remained distant, and that only deepened the uncertainty.
While the town fed on the scandal, Lucas discovered that the truth doesn't just separate people, it also exposes collective wounds. And at that moment, he didn't know if he would ever be able to rebuild his life amidst the echo of the rumors. Days turned into weeks, and Raphael's absence became more and more unbearable for Lucas. Before, they shared secrets, laughter, and even childhood memories. Now the emptiness of their lost friendship weighed on him like a constant shadow. Every time Lucas passed by Raphael's street, he felt a tightness in his chest, seeing the lights on and the door closed to him. Raphael wouldn't answer his messages or return his calls. The silence was deafening, worse than any insult could be. Lucas wondered if he had really done the right thing, or if, by revealing the truth, he had only ripped away the illusion that kept his friend happy. At home, the situation wasn't any better. Mariana remained hostile, and their parents, even without openly arguing, made it clear which side they had chosen. Lucas had become a stranger in his own home, someone to be tolerated but not respected. He started spending more time away from the house, seeking refuge in long walks around town. The stares still followed him, but the loneliness felt less painful than the suffocating atmosphere at home. With every step, he He thought of Raphael and the friendship that was falling apart like sand slipping through his fingers. One night, lying in bed, Lucas remembered the moment Raphael had shown him the engagement ring. The memory was like a knife in his heart. He had destroyed not just a relationship, but also a dream that Raphael had held so dear. Despite the pain, Lucas couldn't convince himself that silence would have been better. Living with the knowledge of the betrayal without speaking up would have been an unbearable lie for him. But that didn't lessen the weight of the consequences he was carrying. Every time he saw Raphael from a distance, his heart would race. His friend would look away as if Lucas were just another stranger. This indifference was destroying him from the inside. It was like losing a brother without even being able to fight to get him back. The silence between them had become an insurmountable barrier. Lucas realized that at this point, there was no room for dialogue, and that made him feel even more isolated. The pain of losing Raphael was different from losing his sister. With Mariana, there was anger and resentment. With Raphael, there was just a void, an absence that echoed like an eternal silence. One night, Mariana walked into Lucas's room without knocking. Her eyes were red, but her expression wasn't just one of anger. There was pain and resentment. "You never tried to understand me, Lucas. Never," she said, breaking the silence with a voice full of bitterness.
Lucas looked up, surprised by her sudden intrusion. Mariana took a deep breath before continuing. "I know I was wrong, but do you think it was easy? Raphael was always busy, distant. I felt alone, invisible." Her words came out as a bitter confession, more to justify herself than to seek forgiveness. He watched her in silence, unsure how to react. For a moment, Mariana seemed less like the arrogant sister and more like a lost woman trying to make sense of her choices. Still, her justifications didn't erase the pain she had caused. "You destroyed everything, Lucas, not just my relationship, but our family too. If you had kept quiet, I would have figured it out. Things could have gone back to normal." The accusation was firm, but her glistening eyes betrayed regret. Lucas took a deep breath. "You don't understand, Mary. Silence would have been a lie, and I couldn't carry that." His voice trembled, but it was filled with conviction. Mariana looked away, biting her lip. Part of her knew her brother was right, but admitting it was impossible. Her pride wouldn't allow it. "Maybe you only did this to feel superior, to prove you're better than me." The cruel accusation hit Lucas hard. He didn't respond immediately. He knew arguing would be pointless. Mariana's anger was still stronger than any attempt at reconciliation. Deep down, though, he felt pity for his sister, trapped by her own choices and unable to fully take responsibility for them. The conversation ended without resolution. Mariana left, slamming the door, leaving Lucas alone with his thoughts once more. Doubt began to grow. Had he actually helped, or had he just destroyed a relationship that with time could have been repaired? This uncertainty started to eat away at his conviction, planting seeds of doubt in his mind. For the first time, Lucas wondered if the price of the truth was in fact too high. Lucas no longer recognized his own home. The once welcoming environment was now a silent battlefield where every gesture and look carried unspoken accusations. He tried to maintain his routine, but with each day he felt the weight of the rejection more heavily. The house, once synonymous with family, now felt like a prison of judgment. His parents, still hurt by his decision, maintained a cold demeanor. His father avoided long conversations, limiting himself to short, direct answers. His mother, always siding with Mariana,
showed her disappointment in every expression. He felt his presence was tolerated, not wanted. Mariana, in turn, intensified her hostility. Sarcastic comments, scornful looks, and veiled accusations became routine. She didn't just want to punish him with silence, she wanted him to feel the full weight of the choice he had made. For Lucas, every interaction felt like walking through a minefield. One day, during a family lunch, the tension exploded. Mariana, unable to contain her anger, said loudly, "You destroyed my life, Lucas! I will never forgive you!" The silence that followed was sharp. Their parents didn't scold her. Instead, they looked at their son with silent disapproval.
Lucas tried to respond, but his voice failed him. The lump in his throat was too heavy. He stood up from the table and walked out, leaving his plate untouched. The fresh air outside was a temporary relief, but the pain in his chest felt unbearable. The emotional isolation was turning into real loneliness. Friends began to drift away, influenced by the town gossip and the distorted version of events spread by Mariana. The feeling of being surrounded by enemies grew, even if those enemies were the people he loved most. At night, Lucas would reflect on everything, sitting alone in his room. He wondered if the truth really set you free, as he had always believed. At that moment, it seemed only like a prison of guilt and rejection. Despite it all, he held on to the conviction that he had done the right thing. He knew he couldn't change his family's opinion or erase Raphael's suffering. But deep down, he wished that one day they would all see that his choice had been guided by honesty. However, every time he looked into his sister's eyes, his hope diminished. Mariana's hatred was a reminder that some wounds might never heal. The peak of the tension came during a Sunday dinner, when their parents decided to gather the family to restore harmony. The mood had been heavy from the start, and Lucas already knew nothing good would come of it. The set table, with its impeccable dishes and silverware, contrasted sharply with the faces full of resentment. At first, everyone tried to maintain a facade of normality. Small talk about work and studies emerged, but quickly died in the face of an awkward silence. Lucas avoided speaking, focusing on the food that seemed to stick in his throat. It was Mariana who shattered the fragile balance. "So are we just going to pretend everything is fine?" she said, staring directly at her brother. Their father let out a heavy sigh, urging calm, but it was too late. The tension had exploded like lit gunpowder. Lucas tried to defend himself. "I couldn't lie to Rafa. He had a right to know." His voice trembled, but it carried firmness. Mariana slammed her hand on the table, making the silverware rattle. "A right to know? And what about my rights, Lucas? My right to handle my own life without you meddling," she shouted, tears streaming down her face. Their mother intervened, accusing Lucas of being selfish, of putting his principles above the family. Their father, though more restrained, also expressed his disappointment. Lucas found himself alone against everyone, and every word he said seemed only to increase the fury of those present. The dinner turned into a verbal battlefield. Old accusations surfaced, memories of long-held grudges came to light. It wasn't just about Mariana's betrayal anymore, but about years of family resentments that were finally exploding at the dinner table.
In tears, Lucas tried to explain that he never meant to destroy anything. He just couldn't carry the weight of such a heavy secret. But his words were drowned out by his sister's screams and his parents' disapproving stares. At one point, Mariana stood up and declared, "You are no longer my brother." The phrase landed like a final sentence, leaving everyone in silence. Lucas felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. He left the table and walked out of the house, his heart in pieces. The night air was cold, but it brought a strange sense of relief. For the first time, Lucas realized that there might no longer be a place for him in that family. As he walked through the deserted streets, he understood that the dinner hadn't just been a fight, it was the final breaking point.
Nothing would ever be the same again. After the explosive dinner, Lucas began to distance himself more and more from the house. He spent long hours out on the street, walking aimlessly, just to avoid the suffocating atmosphere that reigned within those walls. When he returned, silence prevailed, but it wasn't peaceful. It was a silence of rejection, heavy with unspoken hurt. His room became both his refuge and his prison. Lucas spent hours lying down, listening to the distant sounds of the house, his sister's laughter on the phone, his parents' muffled conversations that would stop when he got close. It was as if he had become invisible within his own family. Loneliness consumed him. Raphael remained distant, Mariana treated him like an enemy, and his parents looked at him with constant disappointment. The weight of his choices felt heavier each day, as if he were carrying a stone too heavy to move. Sometimes, Lucas wondered if he had the strength to keep living with so much hostility. He thought about leaving home, starting over somewhere else, but a lack of resources and a silent attachment to his parents kept him trapped. One night, sitting on the edge of his bed, tears streamed down his face before he could stop them. They weren't just for the loss of his sister or Raphael, but for the feeling of no longer having a place in the world. He felt like a foreigner in his own life. The few friends he had left also began to drift away. Some were influenced by the town's rumors. Others simply didn't know how to handle the silence and pain he carried. Lucas found himself increasingly isolated, a ghost among people who were once close to him. The silence became deafening. There were no arguments, but there was no warmth either. It was a cruel absence that ate away at him more than words of hatred ever could. Lucas no longer knew what hurt more, Mariana's fury or his parents' indifference. He started writing in a hidden notebook, recording thoughts and feelings he couldn't share with anyone. It was his only way to vent, to keep from getting completely lost in the emptiness.
Every written page was a silent scream, an attempt to remember who he was before the chaos. But with every word, he also recognized he would never be the same again. Deep down, he was beginning to accept that he might be condemned to live apart from his family, even while living under the same roof. The distance from his family brought Lucas a new routine, long nightly walks where he reflected on everything that had happened. The cold night air was, paradoxically, more welcoming than the warmth of the house. During these hours, he searched for answers to the questions pounding in his mind. Had he truly done the right thing, or had he just been selfish, imposing his own values above the feelings of others? These doubts ate away at him, even when he tried to convince himself otherwise. The line between right and wrong seemed increasingly blurred. During one of these walks, he stopped in front of Raphael's house. The lights were off, and the silence seemed to scream as loudly as his own. Lucas wanted to go in, talk, ask for understanding, but he knew that, at that moment, there was no room for reconciliation. Back in his room, he opened the notebook and wrote about the price of truth. He acknowledged that revealing the secret had been like opening a wound that would never fully heal, but at the same time he knew he could never have endured living under the weight of the lie. His choice had destroyed him, but it had also defined him. Over time, he began to see that the loneliness, though painful, also brought him clarity. Lucas started to reflect on his identity, on who he wanted to be. He realized that even being hated, he could still look at himself in the mirror without shame, and that, in some way, was a form of victory. The pain, however, didn't disappear. Memories of happy days with Mariana and Raphael came in waves, as if mocking his current reality. He missed something he might never get back. On one of the most difficult nights, Lucas fell to his knees in his room, praying for strength. He wasn't asking for reconciliation, just for the courage to endure. It was a humble request, born from the certainty that a long road still lay ahead. Little by little, he began to accept that some wounds don't heal completely, but turn into scars that shape who we are. This thought brought him a measure of relief, like a small flame in the darkness. At his core, Lucas understood that his journey wasn't just about his sister's betrayal, but about learning to deal with the consequences of difficult choices. And this reflection, though painful, was making him stronger. In that moment, alone, he realized that his greatest battle wasn't against Mariana or his parents, but against himself and against the emptiness he needed to fill with meaning.
Months had passed since the explosive dinner. The atmosphere at home remained cold, but the angry outbursts had stopped. The silence continued, heavy and constant. But Lucas had learned to live with it. The pain of rejection was still there, but it was beginning to transform into something else: resilience. Mariana went on with her life, keeping her distance from her brother. Their parents, still disappointed, no longer discussed the matter, preferring to pretend everything was back to normal. Lucas knew nothing was resolved, just hidden under layers of silence and appearances. One day, while walking through town, he spotted Raphael in the town square. His heart raced. His friend looked thinner, his expression tired, like someone still carrying the weight of pain. For a moment, Lucas thought about changing his path, but Raphael called out to him. "Lucas, wait!" Raphael's voice was quiet but firm. The two looked at each other in silence for a few seconds, as if words had been stuck for too long. Finally, Raphael took a deep breath and said, "I'm not going to lie. It was really hard. It still is. But thank you for telling me." Lucas felt a lump in his throat. He didn't know whether to cry or smile. "I just wanted you to know the truth, even if you hated me for it." His voice was choked with emotion. Raphael nodded, his eyes glistening. "I don't know if our friendship can ever go back to what it was, but maybe there's still something we can rebuild." The words were like a breath of hope in the midst of the storm. It wasn't complete forgiveness, but it was an opening, a sign that all was not lost. They said goodbye with a long handshake, filled with memories and silent promises. For the first time in a long time, Lucas felt the weight in his chest lighten just a little. Walking back home, he reflected on everything he had been through. The pain, the loneliness, the accusations, none of it had been in vain. He understood that the truth, no matter how cruel, had the power to set you free, even when it destroyed things along the way. That night, he wrote in his notebook, "Losing people is painful, but losing yourself is unbearable. I'd rather carry the loneliness of truth than the weight of a lie." Closing the notebook, he looked out the window at the starry sky. He felt there was still a long road ahead, but now he had something he didn't have before: the certainty that even in the midst of chaos, there was room for rebuilding. And in the silence, Lucas realized that life, like relationships, can be as fragile as glass, but even the shards can still reflect light. This story shows that the truth can come at a high cost, but living without it can be even more painful. If you also believe that stories like this make us reflect on our own choices, subscribe to the channel now and hit the notification bell. Together, let's dive into many other emotional stories that will touch you deep in your soul.